Fantasy drafts are right around the corner, and I know everybody has their favorites, but today I'm going to give you some of mine. We're going to go through the first 10 rounds, and I'm going to give you 1 to 2 players that you need to draft on your team for this season. Now, I could sit here and talk about which players I love more than others in the first 2 rounds, but just being completely honest, whatever combination you decide to go with in the first 2 rounds are going to be pretty safe, and these are guys that if you hit on one of them, they could win you your fantasy league. So ultimately, you can't really go wrong in the first 2 rounds. Now, we do have a fair amount of rounds to go through, so I'm going to make these kind of quick. And for round 3, it's kind of like the first 2 rounds. No matter where you go, I can see the upside and the value depending on how you want to build your team. But 2 guys that I want to highlight for you guys at home, just to, I guess, hey, maybe you're not paying attention to them. We're going to start with Chase Brown, and then we're going to finish off with Lamar Jackson. For Chase Brown, of course, he is in the most pass-happy offense in the NFL. If there's any injuries on that Cincinnati offense, a guy to T. Higgins, who missed some time last year, or Ja'Marr Chase, Chase Brown turns into a legitimate wide receiver 1 at the running back position. So not only is he going to be the top 10 running back that he was last year, but he's also going to get receiving workload, and he's also going to get the red zone work as far as scoring rushing touchdowns. Chase Brown has an insane high upside this year, and to go in the 3rd round, he could be a running back 1. So if you want to go receiver early, get Chase Brown in the early 3rd round. He could be your savior at the running back position. Now, Lamar Jackson, on the other hand, 2 AFC North guys here. This is a guy that you know what you're getting out of Lamar Jackson, right? He's elite. He's always a top 2 quarterback. But the reason I wanted to highlight him here is because not only do I think he's going to be the number 1 quarterback in fantasy this year, I think the Baltimore Ravens are going to be the number 1 seed in the AFC, and this is the year, if any, that they can actually win the AFC. Now, whether if they do or not, that's a different story. What that means, though, that means that Lamar Jackson's going to have to dominate from start to finish, and as much as Derrick Henry wants to rush for 2,000 yards, he is getting older. So Lamar is going to have to take on more on his shoulders than ever, and I think he's going to dominate this year in fantasy football. So if you can get the number 1 quarterback in the 3rd round, there is a value. In round 4, I want to highlight 2 names, George Kittle and James Cook. For George Kittle, he is already the number 1 go-to receiving option in the San Francisco offense. And then, if Christian McCaffrey goes down, which seems like a yearly conversation, it's kind of bound to happen. That means George Kittle is going to get almost all of the receiving work in this offense, because outside of Christian McCaffrey, his competition is a 2nd-year Ricky Pearsall, who's solid, go Gators, but also a Jawan Jennings who has a contract dispute right now. I think Jawan will be ready for the season, and he's a solid 3rd-down option for this offense. But ultimately, the majority of passing plays are going to be designed for George Kittle, and I think he can have a monster season in return to being the number 1 tight end in fantasy football like he was a few years ago. So if he does that to get him in the 4th round, insane value. James Cook, on the other hand, he's also having a bit of a contract dispute, and I think that's why he's going in the 4th round. If he wasn't having a contract, issue right now, I think he would be going in the 2nd round, because you saw last year he was a top 10 running back with how he dominated on the ground in this offense, because the offense is a run first, pass later offense, again, making Josh Allen's job as easy as possible. But in order to do that, James Cook needs to get the ball as much as possible, especially in the red zone. We saw last year, again, James Cook was a top 10 running back. I have no doubt that if he comes back, this Bills team is looking to win the AFC. So you want to preserve Josh Allen for the entirety of the season. And again, the easiest way to do that is to get your running back the football. I think the round 4 value is insane. So if you have an early draft coming up, get James Cook at where his value is. He's going to sign a contract to be ready for the season. In round 5, I also want to highlight 2 names, Courtland Sutton and Joe Mixon. For Courtland Sutton, this is a guy that in the last 10 games of the season, in 8 of those, he had 9 or more targets, and he averaged 18 points a game. Please don't look at the final standings of the wide receivers and forget about how Courtland Sutton finished the season. He finished as a top 5 wide receiver. He is the number 1 guy in the receiving game in this offense, and though they brought in Evan Ingram, I have no worries that the SMU Mustang Courtland Sutton will be the go-to guy in this offense yet again. An offense that needs to make a jump this year, and hey, they might even win the division. Joe Mixon is actually the best finished running back on average over the last 4 years. Now, they did bring in Nick Chubb this offseason to compete with Joe Mixon, and you do worry about that as far as red zone touches, But as a Cleveland Browns fan, as much as I wanted Nick Chubb back in a Browns uniform, he did lose a step. Again, he was coming off a pretty serious injury. For Joe Mixon, I have no doubt he's still going to be the go-to guy in this offense. And if Nico Collins is getting double and triple teamed every play, there's only young options around Joe Mixon for competition as far as touches. I think Joe Mixon in this offense will revolve around the run game like they did last year, and Joe Mixon should have a huge season yet again. So to get him in the 5th round, he could be your running back 1 or 2 if you decide to go other positions heavy. In round 6, I want to highlight 2 running backs, a veteran in James Conner and a rookie in Caleb Johnson out of Iowa. We'll talk about him in a moment. James Conner is Mr. Reliable. This is a guy that every single year you know what you're getting out of him, but you kind of are timid to actually draft him on your team. He's a guy that always finishes in the top 15, but he just doesn't have that top 5 upside, which kind of detours some fantasy players away from drafting him. But I like James Conner. This is a run-first offense, and if you look at the Cardinals' schedule, they may have the easiest schedule in football. I think the Cardinals, due to their schedule, could be a playoff level team this year. So with that, I guess, state of mind, James Conner's going to have a great year on the ground. And really, Trey Benson, we thought he was going to have an impact last year. He didn't really do much. So James Conner should be the bell cow in this backfield yet again. And he should be a key part on why this team makes a playoff push. If we know anything about Pittsburgh, the Steelers, and its franchise, outside of being a 6-time Super Bowl champion, they always revolve around one running back in their system, really to run their offense. Now, sure, Jaylen Warren will be in the mix, and this is a guy that will take a lot of the receiving work from Caleb Johnson, but Caleb Johnson has insane upside, because if you know anything about him from Iowa, he did everything for the Hawkeyes offense. He can catch the ball, he can run the ball, he has great vision, and he is very twitchy. So this is a guy that in this AFC North, when you have a lot of tough defenses, this is a guy that is 1 cut or 2 cuts away from making a big play happen for this Pittsburgh offense. And hey, if it's not getting done on the ground, you know Aaron Rodgers loves his receiving running backs, as we saw with Breece Hall and other running backs in his entire career. Caleb Johnson, if it's not done on the ground, he can do it on the air as well. This Pittsburgh offense should have a field day getting Caleb Johnson the ball. In round 7, there's a lot of good names. Guys like Monty and Sam Laporta that play for the high-powered Detroit Lions offense. You have exciting rookies like Matthew Golden and once Quinshon Judkins. Of course, do not draft him if your draft is coming up here because, well, he might not play this season. But there's one name that stands above the rest, and to me, that is Khalil Shakir, the #1 wide receiver in the Buffalo offense. Again, shocker. Buffalo, I think, is going to be really good this year. But for Khalil Shakir, the only receiver in this offense that really took away a significant amount of touches was Mack Hollins, and he's gone now. You're bringing in guys like Josh Palmer that, sure, he is a better receiver on paper than Mack Hollins, but he's going to have to find that on-field chemistry with Josh Allen. I think Khalil Shakir not only is the best receiver to come back with continuity in this offense, but he's trusted. He's a great route runner and separator. He's going to have a career season this year in Buffalo. And to get potentially a top 12 wide receiver in round 7 of your drafts, I mean, this is a full PPR fantasy manager's dream in getting Khalil Shakir this late. I think he has a monster season. And finally, in round 8, there's also a lot of intriguing options. You have guys like Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, guys that in the last 5 years have been really locked into being first 3 rounds, again, draft value. But the guys that I do want to highlight are 2 pass catchers, Emeka Egbuka and TJ Hockenson. For Emeka Egbuka, of course, he's a slot receiver from the Ohio State Buckeyes, and he goes into a Tampa Bay offense that has a huge void to fill, as Chris Godwin will be missing for the first half of the season, if not longer. So Emeka Egbuka goes into the slot position of this offense with Baker Mayfield, with Jalen McMillan, and Mike Evans. So that tells me this. He is a great route runner, and he's going to face single coverage almost every single play. That is a recipe for success, especially when you have a gunslinger like Baker Mayfield as your quarterback. Again, great separator, great hands, and if his game from college translates to the NFL level, and if all the camp reports are true, Emeka Egbuka is in for a huge rookie season. Now, TJ Hockenson is, of course, you guys know who he is, plays for the Minnesota Vikings. I think this year is a huge opportunity for him to be a top 3 tight end because of his quarterback situation. When you have a young quarterback, especially in the systems of Kevin O'Connell and Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan, these are offenses that center around running the football and making quick and efficient passes for the quarterback. That's why Sam Darnold had a historic season. For a guy like J.J. McCarthy, who's coming into his rookie season, the easiest way to get him completions and get him in momentum and getting going every single week is to get the ball to his big body, reliable tight end in the receiving game, and that is TJ Hockenson. I think Hockenson's in for a big season. I think they're going to target him a lot more than they did last year. And again, I think Hockenson's in for a huge year. So to get him in the 8th round is immense value. But always remember, you can win your fantasy drafts on draft day, but you could certainly lose it. So drafting the players I highlighted in today's video are always going to be safe, but always high upside players that can win you your fantasy league. But again, let me know in the comments your favorite players this year and where you plan on drafting them.